ברוכים הבאים לעוד פגישה בין הירדן לבין הים. אתם יודעים את עמדתי שבין הירדן לבין הים יש את הריכוז הגדול ביותר בעולם של אידיאולוגיות. בולטות, בוטות, חשאיות, ביישניות, לפעמים נעימות, לפעמים לא כל כך מובנות, אבל המון אנשים מחזיקים בהמון דעות ובהמון אידיאולוגיות, ואנחנו פעם אחר פעם, פגישה אחר פגישה, באים אליהם, מדברים איתם, משוחחים איתם, מקשיבים ומנסים להבין. כמו תמיד, זה לא תמיד קל, לא תמיד נעים, לפעמים מפתיע, אבל עם תקווה שתמיד זה יהיה מחכים. Hi, Sam.
Hello, good morning.
Where are you now?
I'm in Al-Bira.
Al-Bira. This is your background?
This is my city. It's
okay.
a block from my house.
I see. A word about Sam. Just for our watcher to know, we know each other. It is not a surprising meeting. It's not a candid camera. We know each other. One of us even appreciate the other. I won't say whom. And we have, I will say, long, deep conversations about everything which goes from family to philosophy, from politics to ideology. Sam is what can be called in the Zionist jargon, Ole Chadash. I mean, a new immigrant or somebody who ascended from United States of America, Ohio, right?
Correct.
To the highest in the world, Palestine. So correct. Sam is a businessman, Sam is a social activist, Sam is a father and a very, very involved and caring citizen. Who are you, Sam Bahor?
Well, I would take a cue from what you just said and maybe revise it. I'm the son of a native, using the term Jabotinsky used to describe Palestinians. I'm a Palestinian American from Youngstown, Ohio. I'm a computer technologist by training, but involved in business in the broader sense after I earned a MBA degree from Tel Aviv and Northwestern universities. I've been based in Palestine for the last 25 years. I came after the Oslo Accords was signed, was part of building the Palestine Telecommunications Company here, and did several other business endeavors before going off on my own in a consulting capacity. I spend about 30–40% of my time today in civil society, speaking to mainly Western Jewish groups that visit Palestine to try to give a political economy twist to the discussion, which is usually ignored in light of all of the highly politicized discussions that we have. I'm highly convinced that Palestine has a Superman feat in front of it in terms of it has to free itself from Israeli military occupation while at the same time build a state. And that's something that's more than just difficult. It may be, as I said, a Superman task, but that's the task that we are engaged in.
Hang on. Okay, this is the politics. This should be the offspring of a philosophy, a worldview, an ideology. So I will not ask you, what are you more like they used to ask at the high school? Are you more American? Are you more Palestinian? Are you more this or more that? I will take it. You are a melange. You're a combination of all of the above and some more. But this politics you just indicated, which is getting free on one hand and building an independent entity on the same or the other hand, is driven by what? What is your philosophy? What is your ideology? What's your driver?
Okay, easy question. I'm not sure if there's an easy answer because, as you say, it's a mix of many things. I mean, I come from a Western society, so I'm sure I have a set of values which are US embedded in a way, in the best that the US has to offer, not what we're seeing today. That translates to me in a larger sense of I have come from a culture of the concept that rights are inalienable. So for me, rights are something that are not negotiated and discussed. Having said that, a driving force is equality. And that may be my US part of me coming forward as well. I would actually say it's my human part coming forward, that equality is supreme. And when I say equality...
Equality between humans or between...
Between states, between humans, between individuals, between you and your wife. And I think that that equality doesn't necessarily translate specifically to any political configuration. So it's more of a theoretical equality that we should always be yearning for. And we'll get to in a second what that means on the political side. And I also come from a school of thought that is very enshrined in a rules-based world. I come with a lot of reading of history. I'm a student of history as well. And I understand that the world reset after World War II. So after World War II, there's a rules-based order to today's world. It's not perfect, but it does give definition of how we're supposed to interact with each other as individuals and as states and etc. Prior to World War II, we can call it maybe a chaos-based world. And I think the first defining point in any discussion I have with people is, what side of the divide are you on? Pre-World War II or post-World War II? It will not solve the discussion, but at least it tells us in what playground we are operating.
So Sam Bahur is a post-Second World War ideological entity, which understands equality between all humans and all entities as essential, as opposed to pre-Second World War inequality, which led to the atrocities and all the rest of the crimes against humanity and against human beings. And this is a very, very, I will say, general universalist concept that can be applicable in Botswana as well. So what is the twist that makes this universal big picture a Palestinian in Al-Bira?
I think first we need to recognize one thing which is key. Atrocities have happened post-World War II as well. But what changes is there's a set of rules to hold parties accountable and individuals accountable. And that's what was missing pre-World War II, if that's our defining point. Actually, I don't see it relating to a physical location, whether I'm in Al-Bira or Youngstown, Ohio, which is more depressed than where I'm living today, or New York City. I believe those universal values can be applied wherever we are. As I apply them to my political reality of being under military occupation and knowing the history, which is more than just occupation, I have to make a conscious decision of where I want to focus. If I want to focus on absolute justice, and by the way, this entire annexation approach that we're talking about today is taking many, many Palestinians back to the basics, back to not a defining rules-based order, but right and wrong as Palestinians define it. And that could take us back much further than just pre-Oslo. It can take us back to the origins of the conflict. So we start talking about what happened 100 years ago. I'm for understanding what happened 100 years ago, but I'm also a political being, which I take those values that I spoke about and try to place them within a political context. I actually believe my society, for many different reasons that we can talk about, speaks in terms of morality and values, but has not had the opportunity to invoke those within a political track to gain political resolution to the conflict. And as things become more complicated, the more we go back to the values and morality instead of the politics of the situation.
So if I understand you correctly, before we move on, your family name is, I'm a human being equal to all. My middle name is, I'm Palestinian, and my private name is, I'm Sam, who tries to impact my reality, my environment, my society with this set of values rather than somebody else's set of values.
Well said.
Okay, so let's move on. Still on the high abstract level of ideologies and philosophy, and I'm sorry for this, but when you adopt an ideology, you have to make a decision what yes and what not, what is right and what is wrong. I mean, you cannot have it all. I mean, having it all is very childish, ideologically speaking. So what are the questions or the issues that you decide? What are the fundamental questions that drive your ideology?
Again, I don't know if I would say an ideology per se is embedded as one package in a person. There are universal values, the equality, the rights are inalienable, adopting a rules-based world. These values are embedded in me as an individual, and I would hope in the majority of the world. But in terms of ideology per se, I'm less of an ideologist. I mean, I do come from a left-leaning background. So if you would have asked me this question 35 years ago, 30 years ago, I would have started talking about a left mindset. I think I've taken enough medicine and seen enough reality to move beyond that today. So what I look for is more of a restorative kind of justice. Yes, realities on the ground have happened. I don't have to accept illegal realities on the ground. And I want to convince others that where wrongs were done, and our side, where wrongs were done, that there needs to be some type of restorative justice to move forward. And that's not easy. I mean, we can see in South Africa, they tried restorative justice, and I think they're still trying it today, 20 years later. But there needs to be a process to acknowledge that there was a mistake happened in history, and then try to correct it with the least amount of disruption in people's lives. I say all of this understanding and very, very adamant that I don't accept illegalities as a given only because I'm the weaker party. And I think if we start accepting that, we go into a very different place.
So let me see if I understand you correctly. Mistakes were done, wrongs were done. The Nakba, the 67, the occupation, the ongoing deprivation of Palestinians from basic human and democratic rights, etc., etc., etc. And you say, I recognize it, but since I do not want to live in the past only, in order to move for a better future, I need a recognition by all sides engaged, all sides involved in this process, find a way to restore some of the wrongs without committing new wrongs.
Absolutely. And I think that's the political realm that a lot of times is missing in our discussion, at least on the Palestinians. The younger generation, because they're not engaged in a political apparatus which is operating, they tend to go where they only can go, which is the moral high ground. And I tell them the moral high ground is great, but we need to get into politics as well, because at the end of the day, this is a political conflict. And if we don't act in a political fashion, then we're in an academic discussion for life. And my goal is not to be in an academic discussion for life.
So let me take you to the top of the hill. Stay there. Assuming that somehow one day, Deus ex machina, you have unlimited resources, no boundaries of money, no boundaries of political capabilities, none. I don't know what, I mean, kind of La La Land, okay? And you have all the capabilities to implement and to exercise your ideology. How then the reality of Sam Bahor's dream looks like? Now, that's a reality that I, as an Israeli, do not have the privilege to see daily because there is such a high wall. Who heard Sam whom? Palestinian with the name Sam? Okay, yes, there is a Palestinian with the name Sam. And please dream. Tell me, what do you do when it's unlimited?
Look, at unlimited resources, material resources, will not resolve...
And political unlimitation.
And political as well. Those will not resolve, I think, a key bottleneck in the conflict, which is the mind, the human mind. I cannot, with all the resources in the world and with all the power politically in the world, I cannot reverse World War II tragedies. I cannot remove and extract in a mechanical way the fear that has infiltrated the Jewish mind.
You mean the Holocaust?
Whether it's real fear, because there is still anti-Semitism in this world today, or perceived fear because of what happened historically. That's something that doesn't come easily to terms with when you are even with unlimited resources. And my sister, she's in Ohio, and she's a licensed counselor. And she taught me that the person who holds fear, whether it's fear of heights or fear of anti-Semitism, whether it's perceived or real for the person holding it, it's real. And we have to come to terms with how to deal with that. That's why I think there has been mistakes made on our side by the use of violence where maybe it should not have been used. And I'm not a Quaker, I'm not a pacifist. If I thought that, buying an F-16 would free me, I'll be asking you for donations for my first F-16. But I don't think that there's a military solution to this equation. However, if I had total resources, I would put a lot of my effort in educating the Jewish, the Israeli audience here and abroad about the realities on the ground, because I think there's some factual issues that are being dismissed as if they didn't happen. And we can see that, and I spend a lot of time reading some of the Israeli historians who are digging into the newly released declassified documents coming out of the Israeli establishment, only to find that after they review these documents and write about them, the documents are reclassified. So that was a peek into what really happened. And whether we agree or disagree, I would hope that people can see the factual realities for what they are. And I don't only mean that in the historical sense, I mean that in the day-to-day sense. What does occupation mean for a Palestinian day by day? I don't have to convince you of my politics to get you to be looking at Palestinians in a more humane way by seeing what this Israeli occupation is doing. So education is one focal point. And the other place I would put is real resistance. And that's coming from a business person using those terms. Resistance in terms of, as is happening in the US today. It's not pretty sometimes, but direct resistance, diplomatic resistance, economic resistance. I have to make sure that my adversary, who is outside of the realm of the rules of this world, have a cost for what they're doing. And I think today Israel does not have a cost.
So stop here for a second. I listened very carefully and I understand the politics of what you say, which is awareness and action. Okay, the two capital A's. But I ask you a different question. Assuming you overcame the psychopolitics, assuming you overcame the ignorance or ignoring reality, assuming your resistance won over, then what? Then how does it look?
Post-military occupation, and as we are in a state-building mode,
we are in ideology building mood. I mean, you are the engineer and the architect and the producer for a new reality. How does it look?
If I want to dream forward without a political constraint, I would be working on how these two societies, Israelis and Palestinians, can build one shared society, whether that's via a two-state setup or something different. But these two peoples need to learn that they will be living together forever, and they have to find common ground. The more that we find common ground post-conflict, the more I think that we can be an example to the world. And I would put a lot of effort there. But that's ideological. In the reality of politics today, I would be building a state. I would be building and rehabilitating my people after 70 plus years of dispossession, 50 plus years of occupation. That will take some time. But ideologically, we're going to one reality, again, regardless of what the political configuration that reality is, so we can build a shared society together.
So the consistency of your ideology is that on the highest abstract level, I'm an egalitarian, that all humans are equal. And therefore, when as different people we live in the same space, we should share it in order to express this equality.
Well said. Well said. Without too much idealism, maybe based in there. I understand that there's a class issue. I understand that there's a religious component. These are all complex. This is all to me white noise. White noise that has to be dealt with within a realm of equality. Edward Said said it best. It's equality or nothing. And equality can be two states in one state in some other configuration, but equality or nothing. Nobody can convince me in the future, ideologically, I have to be less than my neighbor or less than another entity. That doesn't work for me or anyone else.
From this zero-sum game of Edward Said, okay, let's go to the other side. It's either equality or nothing. Let's give a moment for the thought of the nothing. What will be the moment or the reality or the realization in which Sam will wake up in the morning and say, wow, I'm wrong. I failed. I understand the full fulfillment of your dream. Give me the nightmare of the failure. How does it look?
This is a very good question, and something I've reflected on a little bit. I think what we're proposing today as an exit, a Palestinian state in 22% of what remains of British mandated Palestine, is the worst case scenario. That is the exit. If you ask 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we were talking about a different political reality We did not see Israel as a political entity that can be recognized. That's the past. Today, we're somewhere else. Today, we've accepted, I don't want to use the word surrender because we haven't surrendered yet, but we have conceded everything that we can concede. Now, my Tel Aviv negotiation teacher correctly would be telling me, boy, you Palestinians don't know how to negotiate. You put all of your cards on the table before the negotiation ends. And that's what happened with Oslo. Arafat and company put all of the negotiation items on the table and said, we concede to all of these because we are sincere to move forward and get out of the historical past. And Israel said, thank you very much. Now let's start negotiating. What else can we both put on the table? And we have nothing else to put on the table.
So I understand the dream. I understand the fulfillment. I understand some of the political hurdles that we have to jump over, and even the potential failure that you're very careful to go around. So let us move a step forward. Here I have Sam Bahur, lives in El-Bira, works in Ramallah, thinks like an American, as said, not this America, but the America I grew up in. Biography speaking, not a child of refugees, but a child of immigrants who came back with the hope of Oslo and try politically to change the despair of the current reality. This is Sam Bahur. Who are the enemies or the adversaries of your ideology from within and from the outside? Who stands against you?
Many. I think that there are other ideologies which have embedded within them an exclusivity in terms of a superiority model, like Zionism, like Trumpism, some kind of elitist, I'm better, so I have a better position that I can control. That doesn't work well with me. Again, I don't work in black and white in a way. Sure. So, I work in the private sector in Palestine. Not all the private sector, I think, is engaged in a state-building exercise or a liberation exercise. Some of them are here who are just here to reap money. Those people would be on the other side of my divide because I put myself in an economic development context within a liberation and state-building mindset. Not everyone is like that. So it depends where we're talking, what specific domain we're talking in. I'm sure I can find many enemies. No, but to a lot of what I think about.
Zionism, I understand, because it tries to exclude you from the shared space and tries to never to relinquish its privileges in order to enable you to have the equality you're looking for. I understand Trumpism as a kind of supremacy of one ethnic group over other ethnic group. Let's call it white supremacy, Christian supremacy, etc. So I understand the external one. What's the internal? Who is internally is against the ideology that you portrayed here?
Internally, in terms of inside Palestine?
Inside the Palestinian society.
I would see the younger generation, as I noted, who have never, ever been involved in a political apparatus, whether it's called the PLO or the Palestine Legislative Council or any kind of political apparatus. This generation is growing up in slogans. They live, and they're very intelligent, they're very well read, but they're living within a realm of sloganistic morality discussions instead of more getting your hands dirty and political
it's not
efforts.
An enemy, Sam.
It's not an enemy per se, but it's someone who's going to be a block.
Hamas, Sufis, Saudi Arabia, Iran, fundamentalism, I don't know what. I mean, this kind of categories that I can understand. Sam Bahur is opposing Zionist occupation from here, doesn't like American tyranny from there, and from the inside, there is another osmotic pressure against him.
Look, internally, and again, I don't differentiate maybe between internally and externally as easily as you do, but for me, any entity, any effort which accepts might is right, is to me the other side. Might is right, and might is correct. Yeah, might is correct is not incorrect for me. I mean, whether you're Hamas thinking if you just had better missiles, you can reach further into the Israeli society, or you're America thinking about military intervention in another country, or you're a military occupation which is battering a population and you're happy about it. Any of those concepts which accept might as being right, to me, removes one of my principles, which is that we're living in a rules-based world where there are parameters to how we disagree. It's not the wild, wild west everywhere. And I think some of the people who accept violence as the tool to move their ideologies forward basically think that they're living in the wild, wild west.
So again, let me try to see if I understood the same Bahur in front of me, okay? Equality to all humans, and therefore the right of self-determination for all collectives, as long as the definition of the one or the definition of the collective does not engage might as a tool of persuasion, but dialogue as a tool of communication. Whenever the conflictual parties are living together, you try to create a shared space with all the frictions, with all the hurdles, etc., but in order for coexistence rather than a jockey and a horse existence.
Yes, but even that terminology of self-determination, I don't just accept it at face value, because in my one of my values is living in a rules-based world. Even who has the right to self-determination and who has a right to claim peoplehood is something defined.
Sure.
It might not be prescribed perfectly, but there's some parameters to it. And if we accept it otherwise, then any two people who call for self-determination we have to accept, including Louis Farrakhan calling for the Nation of Islam in Chicago. So you either accept that the rules-based world applies to even how we pick and choose who has the right to self-determination, or we accept a religion being hijacked by a political entity to then create a state which wants to be exclusive.
So in this formulation of yours, that we need a system, let's not call it democracy, because democracy was underrated recently to levels of illiberal reality in so many places, Israel included. But in this reality setting, you are looking for a system which enables us to agree when we disagree.
Absolutely. And I accept disagreement. I don't accept that we have to beat each other up because we disagree.
Okay. So tell me, this will be the last question. So after this, you are redeemed from ideological and can go back to political business. You are in the room. Other people you will never, other ideologies, not individuals, other ideologies, you said with them I will never sit down in the same room, and other ideologies that looks like very, very opposing to yours, you say, wow, I'd like to sit down with them. Who is in Sam's room?
In Sam's room are people who would accept the three values that I spoke about in terms of respecting rights of individuals, themselves and others, equality, and accepting a rules-based world. I would not be sitting down with the Ku Klux Klan. I would not be sitting down with the hilltop settlement youth who are burning people in their homes. Those are people who do not have a shared starting point for a conversation. Other than that, I really would be open to speak to all different points of view, including points of view that may be adopting violence, but can be changed. For example,
people in Palestine you will not sit with?
Like when I look at Hamas, like all Palestinian factions, they are a political entity, but they also have a military wing. I probably do not have much to talk about with the military wing, but the political entity which represents a political constituency, probably it's worthy to speak with them to convince them that that political route is the route to take. That's different than saying that the KKK is not a political entity, for example. And so the political constituencies that use violence, example, United States of America, I would sit with because I need to convince them not to use their military might, to give the biggest example in the world.
So being an egalitarian, will you be ready to share with me and therefore with us the role of the three women in your life?
Oh, of course.
Ideologically speaking?
I have, practically speaking as well, I have an amazing wife, and her and I raised two great daughters. Both of them are in Cambridge today. One is a graduate from MIT. She's currently working in a startup in Cambridge. And the second one is a sophomore at Harvard studying neuroscience. Both of them top quality students in the best universities of the world, and both of them are products of the Palestinian society and Palestinian education system. And I think that says a lot in itself.
Which means your wife brought you back to Palestine, and your daughter followed the father back to America, and the dream for them is that in 10 years' time, what's the role of your daughters in your society?
They want to come back, of course, and they articulate wanting to come back, but they're also confused of what to come back for. And I think that's where the Israeli society would be very keen on seeing that if my daughters are not coming back, Israel will be left with people who don't have the ability to change the reality on the ground. And is that the kind of neighbor that Israel wants to live with for the rest of their lives? I don't think so.
Bahur, among other things, not only a great political and ideological position, but a person that I personally love a lot and like a lot.
Same
and
here.
Learn from everything. Thank you very much, my dear.
Thank you.
Peace on you.
Bye-bye.